welcome.
So I've gone through your profile and you have a lot of things that you did in your life in tech industry. So I thought to tell about you and the work that you are doing to my audience.
Yeah, I would be very interested in doing that. Where should we begin?
So I'll start with your profile. Before that, can you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Sure. I'm Lars Brink. I'm from Denmark. I've been working professionally in software for 9 years. And I spend a lot more time than just work thinking about programming, do a lot of things in my spare time as well, and we'll be discussing that today, I guess.
So I can see you are co-founder of This Is Learning and organizer of Arhas and Arhas JS, first
Yeah.
maintainer. So can you tell about you as co-founder of This Is Learning?
Yeah. So This Is Learning is a foundation or non-profit or an open learning initiative created by me and my friend from India, Santosh Yadav. So it's what we do in our spare time. We create platforms that people can use to share their knowledge. So it's open to everyone. We have a couple of blogs on the dev community called This Is Learning and This Is Angular. We have 2 open learning courses. So that's free courses you can read for free in your browser. You can contribute through GitHub to the course if you want to make corrections. Any size contribution is welcome. They are created in collaboration between some of our authors. We have 30 to 40 different authors on the blogs and even more people joining the open learning courses and to create those. And we have a talk show called This Is Tech Talks and a few other things. And we have a public Discord channel and a private one for the public tech contributors. So if ever you want to join, just reach out to me or Santosh Yadav, because everyone is welcome. Just ask and you'll be invited. If you want to start contributing to open source or writing about it or speaking about it, anything like that, come join our private community. Or if you just want to talk to people and see what we're publishing, you can join our public Discord at any time as well.
So your talk show is about?
So Santosh had been doing his talk show for a year called Tech Talks with Santosh. And This Is Tech Talks we're still trying to find the format. Until now, it's been similar to his show where he interviewed people, something like this, but about different programming things and career advice and speaking to different people in the various communities. So a bit similar to your show, I guess.
So you are into software from long time, from 9 years. So what you learned? What is software to you?
Yeah, so I studied at Aalborg University in Denmark. I studied computer science for 3 years, the bachelor's degree, and I've been working professionally since 2012. Started full stack development, and then I pretty quickly found out that I wanted to focus on front-end development and web in particular. So I've been working with various JavaScript frameworks, also been doing some full stack with .NET and PHP and a few other languages, databases, and so on. Spent a few years in marketing, doing websites and e-commerce early in my career. But for the past 5-6 years, it's been all about enterprise applications. And these past few years, it's been even more focused on cloud native systems and continuous delivery as a principle. DevOps, things like that. I'm a lot into GitHub workflows as well these past years. And I'm also a GitHub star as well. So I won the award nominated by the community. So I get unique insights into the GitHub products directly from the team. So that's very, very interesting as well. Also a Microsoft MVP in developer technology. So I have kind of the same privileges with the Microsoft products for developer tooling and Azure Portal and things like that. So what is software to me? Well, being a developer is about more than writing code. It's about solving a problem, a real world problem using software. So most of the time, I mean, you don't even have to write the software yourself. If you could solve it just configuring someone else's product, you solve the problem, right? Of course, has to fit the organization and the product you're working on and so on. But at the end of the day, it's not about writing software. It's about solving problems. But most of the times you do that by writing software, or maybe you're automating something. But yeah, you don't have necessarily to write it yourself. If you can use, and we do use other people's software all the time, right? With frameworks and tooling, all that. It's a lot of software that we're using to write our software, right? So I'm particularly interested in the energy domain. So I've been working for a few years with energy. Right now, at my daytime job, I'm working on sort of a traceability for energy. I don't know if you've heard about something like Power to X, like producing hydrogen from wind turbine power, for example. We want to build a system where you can trace the source, the origin of that energy. So you can say, you can purchase a certificate saying this hydrogen fuel was produced by wind turbine power, for example. But there can be several transitions from electricity to heat storage, back to electricity, or to heat energy. But we want a system, sort of a process that can verify that whole flow from the moment the original energy was produced, from wind or solar or nuclear or whatever, even coal, right? But we're trying to go away from that today, all the way down to when it's being consumed. So it can be stored, it can be transformed several times, but you want that full traceability back to the source. So that's very interesting, something I enjoy, and I care about, green transitioning of energy and the environment and the climate and things like that. So that's my way of trying to contribute back to the world and trying to help ensure that we can make it visible what energy we're using, what are the energy sources we're using.
So as a technologist, as a programmer, so as a person who understands software at the deeper level, so how do you connect your software programming knowledge with the real world?
Right. Well, I work in a team, and I've worked on many teams, so I speak to my fellow programmers and project managers and product owners and scrum masters and business owners and other stakeholders, customers and clients and colleagues and bid managers and all those kind of roles, right? There are many roles involved in software development today. And other than that, well, I try to contribute back to the different communities so that I can help give knowledge to other programmers, especially, and to help them share with even more people. So hopefully to give them a platform where they can publish their content or they can practice being a better developer and enable other people to be it as well. So yeah, but well, other than that, how do I connect software to the real world? Well, I've been working on so many projects. Sometimes my customer is another developer, so I'm building a platform with APIs and tooling and cloud resources and things like that. Other time, the customer might be a private person, a citizen in Denmark, for example, that want to read their electricity consumption and the source of that electricity.
So you are into multiple things. You are a tech writer, you are a tech speaker. Other side, you are a co-founder of a particular thing. And how you are able to manage so many things, and how many people got affected because of your technical knowledge?
Well, first and foremost, I'm the father of two girls, 10 years old. So that's where I spend the majority of my time. And then when they go to bed, I go back to the computer and I do all of these things. And after they went to bed, so that's how I spend my time. So I'll sleep less hours and get more done that way. And what was
So,
the last question you asked before?
how many people got affected because of your technical
Oh,
knowledge?
oh, okay. How many people? Yeah, that's interesting. How big is your reach as a person to the broader community? Because before I started making public tech contributions, I was also doing knowledge sharing internally in my own organization. So we would do internal meetups, internal blogs, things like that. But that's not knowledge sharing to the public tech community, which I appreciate even more. Um, and when you start doing that, you get a bigger reach, right? I started speaking at a local meetup, which I'm now helping organizing in Aarhus, Denmark. And so there I got the reach of, I don't know, a few hundred people. Then I started blogging, and that was a worldwide audience, right? It was Angular only content, the Google framework for the web. So I don't know, there were maybe a few thousand readers, right? And then you start speaking at big international conferences and write about other topics that are beyond Angular, and you'll get even bigger crowd. How do we measure it? Well, that's difficult, right? I mean, I have had more than 1,000 GitHub contributions for a few years as well. Some people like to answer questions on Stack Overflow. I just published my first book, and it already, yeah, I'm yet to receive the numbers, but I have a pretty good feeling about there will already be a few hundred readers, and eventually a few thousand of that as well. But yeah, I'm on many media, so I don't know the reach or the impact. I know the people I'm directly in contact with. So, for example, in This is Learning, we have about 40, maybe 50 people in the private part of the community where we're helping, supporting each other and contributing to public tech communities. But yeah, Stack Overflow, I'm not even that active there, but it says that I influenced several million people with my answers on Stack Overflow. I mean, that's one way to look at it. But certainly several thousand developers have benefited from the content I have been producing over the past 4 years or so.
So, as per your understanding, what is the connection between software and the human mind?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it, right? So there are several ways to look at that. In the old days, like several thousand years ago, someone made rules, and very few persons were able to write and read back then, but you had to write down the rules for them to be official. And so some people had that role of writing, but who knows if they wrote what was actually decided by the lawmakers, right? We're in a kind of a similar position as software developers today. Someone decides, and maybe we're part of it. Maybe it's a specification, and we can't change much about the purpose and so on. Maybe the technology choice, but we are in charge. We have the responsibility of implementing that system in whichever way it's supposed to work and perform and behave. So we're in a kind of a similar position in that everything is affected by software today. Almost everything, part of our lives, and all from we're born to we're dead. Many thousands of software systems are involved, and as software developers, it's our role to help describe to the computers, right, how they should work. So that's the connection between the human mind and the computer, at least one of them, right? That we as programmers are the ones telling the computers how to work and how to respond to other humans and other computer systems. There's another way of looking at it, like artificial intelligence, right? That's trying to replicate or even go beyond the human mind of being able to do similar things. So at that point, the software becomes almost a human mind. And well, there's other things like, say, quantum computing. That certainly goes beyond what the human mind is capable of. But at this point, it's not generally applicable. But who knows? In a few decades, 20, 30 years, we'll see quantum computing used much more broadly, similar to how after the personal computer, computers started being used for even more things affecting our day-to-day lives more and more.
So what is that particular thing that is making a software to reach every part of the world? Because you are into IT, you are a Microsoft MVP, and you worked on Angular, and you are you are into front end and back end. You understand uh, the user interfaces. So what is that is making to reach everywhere?
Reach everywhere. Well, it's interesting because it seems that only the private businesses are able to expand computer systems to a global audience, whereas all the official government and between governments and states, those software systems rarely expand beyond one nation. It seems to be such a difficult problem to make systems relevant or agree on developing a system for more than one country, for example. Even if you're a big nation, like, say, the United States, they might have issues, I can imagine, using the same system across several states in their nation. And we see the same in the EU with all these nations, 27 nations or so, and we're all developing the same systems or to meet the same demand, but in each individual country. And we see the same thing with the system I'm working on, where we want energy traceability. Everyone wants that, but everyone also wants to build their own. But then at some point, you have to communicate across the country boundaries or borders to agree on who owns a particular amount of energy, so that they can say that I have the green energy, I'm using the green energy. And you can't do that if you're only in one country, because we're importing and exporting power across Europe all the time. I mean, even in Denmark, we're pretty far with green energy when it comes to electricity, at least. And we only produce enough energy to supply 2/3 of our electricity consumption today, despite having a ton, or maybe because of having a ton of wind turbines, wind farms in the ocean, and solar panels. We're not able to meet our own demand anymore in electricity. So we depend heavily on importing electricity from Norway, Sweden, Germany, Netherlands, and we're digging another cable to Britain at this point as well. So we're all interconnected in the global society. But we have yet to see systems being integrated across borders. Maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing.
So what is you when you entered for the first time into software, the day one, before 9 years, when you was doing your masters, or when you're doing your graduation? What are you and what are you today? So if I compare yourself with both of you, what do you say? What you learned?
Okay, so to go all the way back, I guess I got my first computer when I was 5 years old, Commodore 64, back in the early 90s. And after that, I started kind of developing websites when I was maybe 14 years old, I guess. Yeah, 14. So that was in the year 2000 or so. So that's where I really got my interest in programming. Before that, I was always interested in computers. So building my own Windows PC and installing the drivers and purchasing the hardware and so on, and maybe doing it for others as well. So I had kind of the idea that I wanted to do something with computers. I just didn't know what. When I got a bit older, I went to commercial high school. And we were visited by computer scientists from the university. And that was when I knew what I wanted to do with my career. So I wanted to graduate as a computer scientist and program computers and work on softwares, projects and systems and things like that. And that's almost 20 years ago at this point. So yeah, several things happened, right? When I started on the university, it was the first time I I professionally wrote code for a computer. And after 1 year, I got a job programming as well, right, while studying. And you do learn a lot over all these years. It's 11 years since my first year on the university, and that was the first time I really got into like understanding the nature of computer programs and all the concepts we have to be aware of when programming and we can make good use of. So every year you're learning something more, and then the more you learn, the more you realize that there's even more to learn out there. So you have to create that focus on what do I want to learn. I can't learn it all, but what's the most relevant to me? And for me personally, I found the balance in studying something that might not be directly related to my daytime job. So if I was struggling with something on the job, I wouldn't go home and then research that in my own time, but maybe I would do something related. Like I would learn something else about Angular or PHP or .NET or whatever, and that might become useful later down in my career, and it almost always did, because the more you learn, the more knowledge you build up, and the better understanding you can get about the next problem or the next technology. So yeah, every time a year goes by, it's like you get an even better understanding about software systems in general. And the technology is not that important. I mean, you can have your favorite technology. I've been working with Angular for a few years. I wouldn't mind switching to React, but as long as I'm using Angular and I'm a daytime job, that's where my focus is, on learning a lot of things about Angular, to the point that, yeah, I wrote a book about it, right? So that's kind of my learning journey, becoming better at getting a good sense of how computer systems work in general, and how you can learn something about one technology, and because of that knowledge, you know how to do something with another technology, or you can get new ideas, inspiration from whatever you're building in another system.
So what are you before 20 years and what are you today?
Yeah, I had a lot of different jobs. I how do you say it? I quit high school at some point, and I went doing a lot of other jobs for 5 years or so before returning to high school and then the university afterwards. But in those years, I was doing many non-computer related things. Like I was a commercial fisherman. I was a certified mushroom picker. I worked in a slaughterhouse. I worked in food factories. I worked in wood factories. I I worked in supermarkets. Lots of many different things where you don't need much of an education, and it doesn't have much to do with computers. But after those 5 years, I was like, I gotta get back to what I'm really passionate about, or something that I don't want to spend 30 years in the supermarket, for example. That was not satisfying to me. So I went back to school. I started over 3 years in high school, and then another 3 years in the university. And at that point, I was, I guess, what must have it must have been like 27 or something like that when I graduated, and I had kids at that point. And yeah, so that's when I started my professional software career.
So understanding the mechanism of the software, how it works, how the things goes, and understanding the in-depth things of it, how this thinking way helped you in becoming, and I mean, how this thinking way helped you in being a good father and being a great person in life.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like working on software projects and adapting to change and planning enough. I mean, you can apply that to other situations as well. You can organize your life into knowing what do you know for sure, what do you not know about your future and what might happen, and you can focus on your known uncertainties and what's within your control. So I try not to worry about, let's say I had a surgery or something like that. I will just put it out of my mind because it's beyond my control. I cannot affect the outcome of that surgery, so I try not to worry about it. So I focus on what I can affect with my life and my actions. So I will go learn something instead, or I'll go spend time with my kids instead of sitting and worrying about my surgery. And that's the mindset I have. My wife has a different mindset, but so I try to use that to support her because she thinks about all those things that could happen, right? And I know how to turn that worry off. It's in my nature, it's not in her nature, but so I can help her, support her by giving her my perspective on things and helping calming her down. That's just one example, right? But I can use that with my kids as well. And I've learned to be more calm in computer doing development as well, because there's so many risks, there's so many unknowns. Focus on what you can change and focus on a few things at a time, right? And go solve that really well. And that's kind of my philosophy to life as well. so both things affect each other.
So collection of softwares, internet. So you're watching this, you're seeing what is happening, um, the types of software, the designs, the features, the functionalities. In these 9 years, you saw the change. So what do you think? Do you think that we can create as a human being, we can create something which connects with everybody who is living in every part of the world?
Well, we almost have that already. I mean, at least huge parts of the world are interconnected now by the internet. Back in the day, it was mostly the World Wide Web. Today, it's through many other systems that sit on top of the internet infrastructure. Of course, we don't have it in all parts of the world yet, but many. What's the future? That's more uncertain. Like, is it the metaverse that Facebook is working on, Microsoft is working on, so on? I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine. So personally, I don't think the metaverse is the future of humanity on connecting. So I don't know what the next thing will be. I mean, it's interesting to see how video calls are more common today, but I used it on my phone 20 years ago, right? So maybe the future is already here, or it has been here, but it just wasn't the right time yet. Today, it's normal to have a phone with a front-facing camera, and you can use any of the many applications to make a video call. But you were able to do that 20 years ago, just having a phone as well with 3G. But the time was not right, and not everyone had access to that yet. So, and we see that in many parts of software, that the good ideas and the good technology is already out there, but it can take 10 or 20 years before it becomes mainstream, or before someone takes it and take an innovative approach and combine it with something else, or maybe the technology needs to become more cheaper. But in order to do so, it has to be sold more. So the more sold, the cheaper it can get, and then it's kind of a snowball effect. So most likely all the good ideas are already out there. You just don't know which one is going to be the winning idea in the end yet.
So what worked for Tesla?
Tesla?
Yeah,
What are you asking?
because you are into energy, you're working on energy, right? So what worked for them to create something which connects with everybody, and which got a great reputation in the world?
I mean, Tesla they are interesting because they're not a car company, they're a software company, right? They might even start selling car software instead of only producing their own self-driving cars. Maybe they'll just sell that to other car makers. But Tesla is also doing things like the Powerwall and whatever it's called, the roof tile with solar panels. So Tesla is about software. It's about energy. They have very interesting ideas. So maybe they have the winning idea. Like maybe every house or most houses in many parts of the world will have a power wall and will have an electric car, maybe a self-driving car. But when? Is it in 5 years or is it in 50 years? That's probably more of the question.
So what is the destination of software?
The destination, like in which direction are we heading? What's the
Where,
future of software?
yeah, where we are going to reach with this tool?
Well, we'll be able to reach, or I guess we're already on Mars at this point. We're on other planets, right? We have software on Mars with the rovers. So, and we even have there's this old satellite that's just flying to the edge of our solar systems. After 35 years, it's maybe it's still working or it's stopped working, whatever. But there's software in that thing, right? So it's kind of interesting. We're already reaching beyond the planets. So that's one way of looking at where does software go. We'll see more in space. We'll see more software systems on the moon, on Mars in the next few decades, maybe even. And but what else is in the future of software? Well, I started using something called Github Copilot. It's an AI to assist you as a programmer. So it's trying to predict what code you're trying to write, which is very helpful, both if you're learning a new programming language or a new framework or programming in general. The AI Copilot by GitHub can help you write snippets of code, and it's incredibly well aware of the context of you're using this framework, you're using this programming language, you're writing software about this domain, you're writing for an English language system or Danish one or an Indian one or whatever. So yeah, I was kind of blown away by how how accurate it is many times. Not always, but many times. And so should we worry about computers writing software so that we don't need software developers? I don't think in the next 50 years, at least, because the best use of an artificial intelligence is combining it with humans. We'll see that for programming, like with GitHub Copilot. You wouldn't want Copilot to write code on its own. We need the human to see the code and, oh, that's something like what I had in mind, but you shouldn't do that because I know that from experience. So I'll just change one line of code out of the 20 it generated for me. So the combination of the human mind and the artificial intelligence is the best solution for many things. We'll see it with doctors as well, that you can write an artificial intelligence to inspect X-rays and all these kind of scans of the humans as well to look for, say, cancer. And they tried that. So they trained a machine to investigate for cancers in all these scans and examinations. And they could only get to something like 93% accuracy, like detecting potential cancer in the human body out of all these scans. And a human who had decades of experience could investigate similar scans or the same and reach something like, yeah, it was higher than the artificial intelligence, maybe 95% or something like that. But when they combined artificial intelligence with the human, they could reach 98% accuracy in detecting cancer from all those scans. So the human and the computer are better together, and I think that's the way we're going. Like the computer will not be able to do everything we can do on its own, but we become better when we are assisted by the computer. We see the same thing with, let's say, robots in manufacturing, for example, in factories, that it can only do so much autonomously before you need human oversight. So the factories are not humanless, most of them. Some of them are, but even then things can go wrong, and you need humans to service the robots and to keep an eye on them and upgrade them and maybe charge them and replace parts and doing diagnostics and all of those kinds of things. And some factory workers today are using robots for some of the trivial tasks, and then that helps the human in doing their work, but it doesn't replace them. So I think that's pretty interesting to see that it's the combination of, say, artificial intelligence and human intelligence that's the best solution going forward for some domains.
So what do you understand listening to the technology leaders when you meet or when you see them in any videos somewhere or in the podcast as a leader, as a technology leader? What you understood and what that you want to put in their conversation or that you have in your mind?
Well, I think something that we see from time to time appear is, at which point does our responsibility as programmers begin and where does it end? So if you programmed the self-driving car, are you responsible for people dying when using that car? You or me as the programmer, I don't know, maybe we should feel responsible, and maybe we could look at all code or most code in the same way. Like, if someone was to trust this system with their life, would I ship this code, right? So maybe we should think more about being responsible about the systems we're developing. I mean, not everyone has a human life depending on it, but maybe if that was our philosophy, and maybe we do need to own the responsibility of the systems, maybe we need to think about the ethics of the things we're doing. We're seeing that with AI, for example, with built-in bias of racism and things like that. So maybe we should think more about the ethics and the responsibility of being part of developing all these systems in the world. I don't know how, but I think it's something we have to become better at these next 10 years.
So what do you do as an organizer of Arhas?
Aarhus.js, that's a local JavaScript meetup. So we meet in person a few times per year, and we have a few speakers, maybe 3, maybe 2, and maybe there will come like 60 to 80 people and attend in person. So that's a very nice way of supporting the local community and giving people the opportunity to speak and grow if they want to start speaking themselves at events. So that's how I personally got started as well, also at the same meetup. So it was the beginning of my public tech contributions. So it's a good path, and it's very nice to meet with like-minded people and passionate people, especially some that are close to you, like at a driving distance or whatever. It's different from being online. I mean, I meet many great people online, like yourself and many of that are now some of my best friends at this point. But also meeting in person with the local people in your local community, that's also a special feeling and a very good way to start your public contributions career. Get some practice and throw yourself out there. I mean, it might not feel as daring to go in front of 20 or 40 or 60 people as to but it leads to things like standing at an international conference with thousands of members in the audience, or maybe even more if it's an online one with tens of thousands of people watching. So yeah, that's something I want to contribute back. So I just joined the organizers team of that Aarhus.js meetup. So very happy with that. That's what motivated me to start contributing back.
So you maintain FOSS?
Yeah, so FOSS is free and open source software. So I help maintain a few packages, open source packages myself, and with a few other people, we have an open source team called NG Workers. And I also contribute to other open source projects from time to time, like Angular, a few Microsoft things and stuff like that. And even my day-to-day time job is also open source, at least in its public source code. It's using the Apache 2.0 license. So but I think it can become even more open. There's more to open source than just open sourcing, like showing the code. I mean, that's the bare minimum of being able to call yourself an open source project, is having an open source license and having the code in the public. There's more to it than that. Like there's open governance, open communication, inviting other people in to help maintain and to help decide on what's the future of this product or package. So that's something I'm personally very interested in learning more about and helping grow this product I'm working on to become more open, and how I can use those same principles in the open source packages I help maintain as well. How can we make that even more open and enabling the community to contribute easier? And I'm trying to do that as well with the things in This is Learning, like having it open to everyone. I mean, the only barrier of entry is you have to ask, but you'll be let in. Like we won't block anyone or keep anything out. You just have to ask to show that you're interested, and then we'll invite you in and you'll get access to all our platforms. You can come stream on our YouTube channels. You can publish in our publications. You can help contribute to our open learning courses. So yeah, that's my way of trying to learn more about open communities.
So what you wrote as a technical writer?
So I think I started writing 3 years ago or something like that. I was writing blog posts mostly about Angular, also about testing, automated testing, about architecture, about workflows on GitHub and actions on GitHub. So automation of workflows and pipelines and things like that. And I've been editing other people's articles as well. I've been mentoring people to start writing or become better writers. And then I think it was 2 months ago, I published my first book, and it's also about Angular. So it's called Accelerating Angular Development with Ivy. So it's kind of an interesting book in that it's for the person who already knows Angular but wants to become better, learn some of the new things that have been added over the past 2 years. So it's for the experienced Angular developer. You don't have to be like an expert, but you have to know the fundamentals to get the most out of this book. But even if you are an expert, I guarantee you'll learn something from this book if you're an Angular developer, because it's packed with many learnings that I had to spend a long time learning myself. And I've been using Angular intensively for 5 years or so. So there's learnings for everyone who develops Angular in this book. Yeah. So, and then writing documentation for the open source packages I maintain as well, and contributing to other open source projects, documentation. So yeah, that's my, and before that, it was internally in the companies. I was blogging, and in my daytime job, I'm also writing developer documentation and things like that. So that's the experience I have with technical writing.
So what you speak as a technical speaker?
Well, it's kind of the same topics like Angular, architecture, automated testing, GitHub workflows and actions, so a little Azure and things like that. So I was, for example, I was speaking in 2019 before the pandemic. I was speaking at 3 different Angular conferences in Denmark called NG Vikings, in Ukraine called Angular in Depth, and in Poland called NG Poland and JS Poland conferences. And that was a great experience. I met many nice people, and I got my talks out in front of thousands of developers. And well, last year I was speaking virtually at many different events like some Angular virtual conferences and GitHub satellite conference and podcasts and talk shows and live streams and interviews and yeah, things like that.
So what made you to write a book, and what made you to become an author, and why accelerating Angular development with TV?
So, well, I published a book with Pact Publishing from India and Britain, and they were the ones who reached out to me asking if I wanted to help write a book about Angular. And they wanted me to write an introduction to Angular, and I didn't feel like doing that because I felt that there were already many books like that. And I thought it would be more interesting to say, now that you read that introduction, what else do you need to learn? Like, you already know all the fundamentals, but what about all the tooling? What about the configuration, the APIs that are not documented but are very useful? What's the latest features in TypeScript and Angular and so on? So about the title, I didn't write the title. That was Pact Publishing. So I didn't care what the book was called. I cared about what was in it. So that was kind of funny. And
So Yeah, go on.
So it was a great experience to finish that book. Spent more than a year writing it. I co-authored it with another Dane called Jakob Andresen. So yeah, we were two people writing for a year. So it was a good experience in that it's very special to have, like, it's a digital book, but many people choose to order it, like purchase a print copy, like this one. So and it's also a special feeling to have the book here, like in your hands and seeing your name on there. So it's a very special feeling, and I like go and sign copies for people and doing giveaways at the local meetups and conferences and things like that. Yeah, I I mean, I thought about writing a book before they asked me, but I figured I don't know how to write a book. So it was actually a good experience to write it together with a publisher, because they know how you would write a book, and they were pretty demanding about come up with a solid plan and plan it out. How many chapters? What's the name of the chapters? What's in each chapter? And how many pages? And time plan, things like that. And then after all of that was done, I could focus on writing the book, getting some feedback and reviewers and technical editors and things like that. And Pact were great at publishing the book and distributing it to many channels, so you can buy it from many different stores, and from Pact's website you can buy it from all the different Amazons. So yeah, that was a nice feeling as well, that I could just focus on the writing, and then they would distribute it to all these different bookstores.
So tell me, you as a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I can tell you about how to become one. You have to be nominated by another Microsoft MVP or a Microsoft employee. So it's kind of special in that way, but it's the same in the Google GD program. So you get nominated, and then you go through a review process. You have to fill in all the entries of relevant public tech contributions you have done, and the Microsoft MVP is primarily about Microsoft products and technologies, but I'm in the category called developer technologies, which is kind of not only Microsoft things. So it's kind of the junk drawer of the MVP program, the ones that don't fit in any other product category. So, but there's some amazing people in that category as well, and that's the way I was able to join the MVP program and win the award for 2 years at this point. So because it's that category is also about web development, it's also about developer tooling, and those happen to be the areas I'm most interested in. So it's a good fit. So I get secret knowledge from Microsoft about upcoming products, and I'm able to give feedback on them before they're released in public, get to talk to the product teams, get to talk to other MVPs, invited to certain events, and can request access to the proprietary source code of Microsoft. Nowadays, most of it is, or a lot of it is open source, but there are also some proprietary systems, and you can get access to that as an MVP. So it's kind of interesting as well. And then you get listed on the Microsoft MVP website so that other people can find you and maybe invite you to some events. And it's also good for your career profile as well, I guess. So, and then I compare that to the GitHub Star program, which is newer than Microsoft MVP. And the special thing about that is you have to be nominated by, not by a GitHub employee, but anyone in the community. Every one of us can nominate people to the GitHub Stars program. I think you can nominate 2 persons every 6 months or something like that. So the first year of GitHub Stars, 16,000 people were nominated by hundreds of thousands of developers, right? And they picked 60 of us in the first year or so. So I'm very, very honored to win the GitHub Star Award because the community was the ones who nominated me. I mean, I had no idea. I never thought I would even be nominated to the GitHub Star Award and also go through the review process, right? And getting acknowledged by the GitHub Star program that I'm like, I do good things. I make public tech contributions that they are happy about. And the GitHub Star program is not only about GitHub products, it's more about public tech contributions in general. So things that would make you or anyone else able to become a GitHub Star is doing open source, speaking in public, writing books, doing talk shows and videos and writing about things and all these kind of public tech contributions. Those could make you able to become a Microsoft MVP or GitHub Star, and that's really nice. And the other thing setting the GitHub Star program apart from, say, Microsoft MVP is you can only win it for 3 years, and then you become an alumni, and then that leaves room for other people to become GitHub Stars. So I think that's kind of a nice way of doing things, that you can only be there for 3 years, and then it's time to make room for someone new.
So you're learning about RxJS and functional related program in general.
Oh, yeah. So RxJS is a reactive programming language or a sort of library for JavaScript. There are Rx libraries for many other technologies like .NET and Java and PHP, Kotlin and Ruby, and Python, and so they have similar concepts in between all those languages. RxJS is, I'm interested in it because it's part of Angular. So, and it's an important part of Angular if you want to tweak your application for performance. So you depend on the reactive state rather than what's it called, like mutable state. Yeah. So yeah, I've been looking into that the past 3 years, especially. I use it in my day-to-day job doing Angular. I haven't used it for anything other than Angular, but some people are using it for React and some are using it for Node.js as well. So it's becoming a very popular library at this point. So that's very nice to see.
So what are the skills and languages that you have?
So my primary language, programming language, is JavaScript. That's the language I love the most. I started doing PHP as well, and it's not as bad as most people say. PHP, I mean, the programming language is not the problem. The developers using the programming language is where the problem is usually at. So PHP is definitely not a bad programming language, and people having prejudice against PHP is based on decades old experience of using PHP. So if they say PHP can't do this and can't do that, well, it could do that 10, 15 years ago. You just didn't know. So PHP was actually pretty good programming language in my experience. I mean, there's plenty of tools. The language has evolved over the years, and in Denmark, it's mostly .NET, C#, the programming language C# from Microsoft, and it's mostly Java. Those are the big languages in Denmark. So I've mostly been doing C# other than JavaScript. But I started with PHP and also did some things like WordPress using PHP. And I mean, I've been doing tons of programming languages like Lua and Python, Ruby, and things like there's something called TypoScript. I'm doing with an O, and I'm doing TypeScript with an E. in Angular and JavaScript instead of JavaScript, right? I've been using SQL and several dialects of the SQL language, like T-SQL for the Microsoft SQL Server, the MySQL dialect as well, the MariaDB version of MySQL, Postgres, SQL as well, HTML, CSS, sassy CSS, less, YAML, JSON, XML, yeah, many different languages of programming. But JavaScript is my favorite by far.
So what are the points that a human need to put in his mind when it comes to 100% AI creation?
When it comes to what an AI creation?
100% AI creation.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm no expert in that, but I think you should consider doing human collaboration before anything else. That's the best result, in my opinion. So don't make an autonomous AI. Always have a human assist. But how will you make self-driving cars then? I don't know. I mean, there are self-driving cars, but they're not used as much. And we'll probably see them in 10, 20 years, something like that. Maybe later, probably not before. They will be widespread used. Yeah, I don't know about. I don't know. I think you should always go for human collaboration first before doing fully autonomous AI. I mean, AI is many things, right? But if you're thinking about systems that affect people and the health and the life of humans, yeah, then it could be a problem. Like that's where we have to be careful about our ethics.
So as a software programmer, you are seeing the consequences of the softwares that you are observing, that you are understanding. So when it comes to 100% AI, so what are the key points that human need to put in his mind in order to reduce the negative impact?
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of research being done about the ethics of AI. Unfortunately, the private businesses they have a conflict of interest because they want to use AI, and they do research in AI, but maybe the result of that research is not in line with the the interest of the business. So that's an ongoing problem, that there is no standard for the AI ethics, what you cannot do with AI. And it's an increasing problem in that AI is making more and more decisions that affect us in our day-to-day lives. It's used for banking credits, it's used for insurance, it's used for health. It's affecting more and more parts of our lives, and there are no rules to regulate AI yet. So that's something that has to change in the next 10 years.
So after 10 years, are you able to program human emotion in a machine?
Depends on the definition of human emotion in a machine. Like look at is she called Sophia or something? The AI robot humanoid that can communicate and kind of make decisions on her own, and you can have a natural conversation with her. So there is already kind of a human AI out there. And there's things like the GPT-3 systems or algorithms, AI systems that, for example, the product I spoke about, GitHub Copilot, I think it's based on the GPT-3 or the OpenAI technologies. So human emotion, well, we would be able to, you'd be able to create a bot today where we would have trouble identifying whether you're talking to a human or a bot. It might even be better to pick up on our emotions than a human could. And we might not even need to speak through text. We could even use voice communication, and it could speak back to us. So how would we know whether it was human or an AI? That line will become more and more blurred in the next decade. And there's no way around it, really. So we have to figure out how we can, we have to teach the AIs about ethics and human lives and the value of that. So that's something we have to take care of.
So one last question is human creation, the software, and the nature creation. What is, if I ask you to relate both, because both have some mechanism. Nature is acting, nature is creating things, natural disasters.
Mm-hmm.
You're observing the natural resources, you work in one of the natural resource thing. So if I ask you to relate software with the nature software, so as a programmer, what is the common thing that you observe and which is powerful?
Well, I think that we as developers are becoming, well, not only developers, humans in general are becoming more distant about the effect of technology in our lives, like hiding behind the screen of social media, hiding behind in a container somewhere, piloting a drone on the other side of the planet, taking human lives or affecting human lives. A developer who wrote that program for the drone that took the human lives. I mean, we have distanced ourselves a lot from the impact on human lives because of technology, and I think that's increasing right now. How much we distance ourselves from the actions of what we do using technology or creating technology.
So, and what do you say about my questioning in this conversation and about our conversation?
So software can be help, can help and can be used to solve the climate crisis, but software can also cause the escalation of the climate crisis. But what does that mean? Should we stop using software, or should we become better at using software? It depends on who's the intentions of the ones investing in that software. And it just happens to be that many of the biggest tech companies are the ones investing the most in future technology research. So it's the intention of those companies, and we see us as consumers, us as employees in those big tech companies. We're starting to, at least we're trying to show our voice, right, in the matter, because their decisions is everyone's decisions. How they spend their money, their computer systems, their energy, things like that. It affects all of us. So we have to make our voices heard when it comes to politics, when it comes to global tech companies and other global companies as well.
And your observation about my questioning in this conversation?
About your last question or what?
about the entire questioning of mine.
All of your questions. Well, I found them very interesting. Thank you for a very nice conversation. You caught me off guard a few points, but I hope I made sense, sort of, and that your audience enjoyed the conversation as well.
And at last, have you seen any videos of mine on YouTube, and what do you say about it?
Yeah, I saw a few after you invited me to this conversation, and I think it's very interesting that you have such a diverse range of people and technologies and countries, and yeah, so it's really, you have like a global collection of technologies from different industries and different countries using different technologies. I think that's really interesting to watch, and having conversations about many different things. So yeah, I really enjoyed watching a couple of episodes of your show, and very honored to be part of it myself. So thank you very much for inviting me.
You want me to share any web links of yours with my audience? Something that they can learn from your work?
So yeah, I write a lot on Twitter. So if you want to follow my work, you should find me on Twitter. And I have a very long name. Hopefully you can put that in the description and people will be able to find me, because it's Lars, Gyrup, Brink, and Nielsen. So no one other than me in the world with that name, I guess. So find me on Twitter and I'll tweet about all my things, and you can find all those other things there.
Thank you, Lars, for giving me your valuable time and expressing yourself about your experience, and also answering some of my questions. So I hope this will reach different people, and it will affect them, and it will make them think, and it will help them in their growth.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a very pleasant conversation.
Can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yes, you can.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yeah, I think that was great. I mean, I watched one episode on YouTube and I listened to one on podcast. So it was great having both. Because I do listen a lot to podcasts when I'm driving and when I'm doing chores at home, like mowing the lawn and going to a recycling center and cleaning and things like that. So yeah, it was great. I now subscribe to your podcast on my audio player.
Thank you, Lords. Keep going and keep inspiring people. And I hope your contribution in the world, like your knowledge about humanity, at the same time your knowledge about software programming, both will help in creating something that is beneficial for mankind, and also other species on this planet.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.